Alistair Finch stood before a floor-to-ceiling window, a silhouette against the glittering skyline of a city he basically owned. In his hand, a glass of eye-wateringly expensive scotch sat untouched. This sprawling penthouse, filled with priceless art and silent polished surfaces, wasn't a home. It was a monument to his success and a prison he'd built himself. All he could hear was the echo of his own breathing. He spoke, his voice a low murmur that barely disturbed the silence. "Alistair," he said to the empty room, knowing his old friend and butler was listening from the doorway. "What's the going rate for a real smile? How much does an honest conversation cost?" Arthur stepped into the room, his posture perfect, his expression carefully neutral. "Sir, I'm not sure I follow." Alistair turned, a deep, hollow ache plain in his eyes. "It's this emptiness, Arthur. I'm surrounded by people, but I've never been more alone. Every handshake is a negotiation. Every compliment feels like an invoice. They don't see me, they see a walking bank vault. I've forgotten what it feels like to be seen for who I am, not what I have." He placed the glass down with a decisive click. "So, I'm getting rid of it, at least for a day. I've come up with a little experiment. I need to know if real, unconditional kindness still exists in a world that seems to have forgotten how to care. I have to know if there's anything left that my money can't buy." Arthur's brow furrowed just slightly. "A test, sir." Alistair nodded. "A test. I'm going to become a nobody, just a man down on his luck. And I'm going to see who, if anyone, offers a hand to a man with nothing to offer in return." A few hours later, the transformation was complete. The bespoke suit was gone, replaced with frayed, worn-out clothes. The polished designer shoes were swapped for scuffed boots. A little makeup created the illusion of sleepless nights and a weary life. Alistair Finch, the billionaire investor, had vanished. In his place was Alan, a man whose face was etched with the quiet desperation of someone who had lost his way. He found himself outside a small, unassuming diner called The Daily Grind. It was the kind of place he hadn't stepped foot in for 30 years. The neon sign flickered, a beacon of greasy spoons and lukewarm coffee. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open, and a small bell chimed his arrival. The diner was mostly empty. A couple of truckers sat at the counter, and a family was squeezed into a booth in the corner. A waitress with a sour expression and a name tag reading Brenda glanced up from her phone, her eyes scanning his shabby appearance with obvious disdain. She strolled over, chewing her gum loudly. "Table or counter?" she asked, her tone flat, already writing him off. "Just the counter is fine, thank you," Alistair said, his voice softer than usual. He slid onto a stool, the cracked vinyl cool against his skin. Brenda slapped a menu down in front of him, stained with old coffee rings. "Know what you want? I don't have all day." Alistair looked at the prices. Even here he felt a manufactured pang of anxiety. He was only playing a role, but the sting of being judged for his apparent poverty felt surprisingly uncomfortably real. "I'll just have a coffee for now, please." Brenda rolled her eyes. "Just coffee, right." She stalked off and returned a moment later, slamming a thick, chipped mug on the counter. Coffee sloshed over the side. She didn't bother to wipe it up. Alistair nursed the bitter liquid, watching. He saw Brenda treat other customers with a phony cheerfulness, especially a man in a business suit who had just walked in. The contrast was jarring. His experiment was only an hour old and was already confirming his most cynical fears. He felt a familiar weariness wash over him. Maybe this was a fool's errand. Maybe kindness was just a service you paid for. Just as he was about to give up and leave, another waitress came out of the kitchen. She looked young, probably in her early 20s, with a kind face and tired eyes that still managed to sparkle. Her name tag read Chloe. She moved with a quiet efficiency, refilling coffee cups and clearing plates, offering a gentle smile to everyone she passed. She noticed Alistair's empty mug and approached, with a fresh pot of coffee in her hand. "More coffee, sir?" she asked, her voice warm and genuine. Alistair was taken aback by the simple, respectful "sir." "Oh, yes, thank you," he managed to say. As she poured, she saw the spill Brenda had left. "Oh, goodness, let me get that for you," she said, quickly grabbing a cloth and wiping the counter clean. She looked at him, her smile never wavering. "Rough day?" The question was simple, but she asked it with an empathy that cut right through his disguise. "You could say that," Alistair replied, his voice catching a little. "I know the feeling," she said with a soft laugh, "but a good cup of coffee helps. It's on the house." She topped off his mug, gave him a small encouraging nod, and moved on to her next table. Alistair sat there stunned. It was a small thing, a free refill, a wiped counter, but it was the first act of unsolicited kindness he had received all day. It was a flicker of light in the cynical darkness he had been building around himself. He watched her work, noticing how she treated the burly truckers with the same gentle respect as the family in the corner. Her kindness wasn't a performance, it was just who she was. For the first time in a long time, Alistair felt a sliver of hope. The next day, Alistair returned to the daily grind. He had to know if Chloe's kindness was a one-off or if it was just part of who she was. He felt driven now, not just by a philosophical question, but by a deep personal need to restore his own faith in people. This test wasn't just about watching anymore. It was about finding something to believe in again. He took the same seat at the counter. As if on cue, Brenda appeared, her expression even more sour than the day before. "You again?" she snapped. "Look, if you're just going to nurse a single coffee all day, you're taking up a seat for a paying customer." Alistair put on a pained expression. "I was hoping to get something to eat today, a sandwich maybe." He pulled a few crumpled bills and some loose change from his pocket, pretending to count them anxiously. "Oh dear, I seem to be a little short." Brenda's face hardened. "Then it looks like you're out of luck. This isn't a charity. Now, are you going to order something you can afford, or are you going to leave?" Her voice was loud enough for the other customers to stare and stare. Alistair felt a wave of humiliation, both real and performed. He saw the judgment in their eyes, the quick dismissals. Suddenly, Chloe was there, placing a gentle hand on Brenda's arm. "Brenda, that's enough. I'll handle this." Brenda scoffed. "Fine, your funeral," she muttered, storming toward the kitchen. Chloe turned to Alistair, her face full of compassion. He braced for pity, but he didn't see any. Instead, there was only understanding. "Don't you worry about her," she said softly. "What kind of sandwich were you hoping for?" I can't afford it," Alistair said, looking down at his hands. "Tell you what, I get a free meal on my shift, and I'm not that hungry today. How about you have my lunch? I'd hate for it to go to waste." Alistair looked up, genuinely shocked. This was way beyond a free coffee. This was a personal sacrifice. You would do that for me?" he asked. "Of course," she said, with a simple shrug. "Everyone has a rough patch. A little help can make all the difference. Is ham and cheese okay?" He could only nod, completely at a loss for words. A few minutes later, she returned with a plate holding a freshly made sandwich and a small side of fries. She placed it in front of him. "Enjoy," she said, before turning to help another customer. As he ate the simple meal, Alistair felt something profound shift inside him. It wasn't just the food, it was the selfless act behind it. He'd spent decades in boardrooms where every move was a calculated play for power or profit. He'd signed checks for millions without a second thought. Yet this simple sandwich, given freely by a young woman who likely struggled to make ends meet, felt like the most valuable thing he had ever received. He was witnessing integrity in its purest form, a person being kind even when it cost them. He lingered, wanting to understand the person who had shown him such grace. He caught her eye later, after the lunch rush had died down. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Truly, you didn't have to do that." She smiled, wiping down the counter. "It's just a sandwich, but I get it. My mom always told me you should never look down on anyone unless you're helping them up. My car broke down last week and the repair bill wiped me out. I'm working double shifts just to catch up. A stranger helped me on the side of the road, didn't ask for a thing. I guess I'm just paying it forward." Her story hit him like a ton of bricks. She was dealing with her own major struggles, yet her first instinct was to help someone she thought was worse off than her. This wasn't just kindness, it was profound character. Alistair Finch, the man who could solve any problem with a wire transfer, felt humbled. He had found it, the one thing his money couldn't buy: a pure, compassionate human heart. These stories aren't just entertainment, they're reminders. They remind us that a small act of kindness can change a life in ways we can't even imagine. If you believe in that, subscribe and become a part of a community that looks for the good in the world. The next afternoon, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up in front of the Daily Grind. The sudden appearance of such a ridiculously expensive car on the humble street made people stop and stare. The chauffeur, in a crisp black suit, hurried around to open the rear passenger door. Out stepped Alistair Finch. He was no longer Alan, the tired, beaten-down man. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His shoes gleamed, and he radiated an aura of immense power and wealth. Beside him stood Arthur, looking stoic as ever, holding a leather briefcase. Alistair pushed open the door to the diner. The little bell chimed, but this time every head in the room snapped toward him. The silence was immediate and heavy. Brenda was at the register. Her jaw dropped. She fumbled with the buttons, her eyes wide open with a mix of shock and greedy excitement. She smoothed down her apron and rushed toward him, her entire demeanor transformed. "Welcome, sir. Welcome to the Daily Grind. Can I get you our best table? Right this way. Anything you want. On the house, of course," she gushed, her voice dripping with a sickeningly sweet tone. Alistair stopped her with a raised hand. His gaze was cold and piercing. "I believe we've met," he said, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight. Brenda froze. Confusion flickered across her face, then dawning horror. She stared at his face, really looked at it, past the expensive suit and the confident air. She recognized the eyes of the man she had insulted and tried to throw out just the day before. Her face went white. I don't," she stammered. "You don't remember me?" Alistair continued, his voice steady. "The man who was just taking up space? The one who wasn't a paying customer? The man you told this wasn't a charity for?" Brenda's entire body started to tremble. I'm so sorry, sir. I had no idea." "No," Alistair said, his voice cut in through her excuses. "You had no idea I was wealthy. That's the point. You see, character isn't how you treat someone who can do something for you. It's how you treat someone you believe can do nothing for you. And your character, madame, has failed the test." He didn't raise his voice, but his words hung in the silent diner like a verdict. Brenda looked like she was about to collapse, her face a mask of shame and regret. Alistair's gaze softened as he looked past her, scanning the diner. "Is Chloe working today?" From the back, Chloe emerged, looking confused by the commotion. She saw the wealthy man at the front, and then her disgraced coworker. She approached cautiously. "Is everything okay?" Alistair turned to her and his whole expression changed. The coldness vanished, replaced with a warm, genuine smile. "Chloe, it's me, Alan." Chloe stared at him. She looked from his expensive suit to his kind eyes, and slow recognition washed over her. She looked completely bewildered. "Alan? What is going on?" "I'm not really Alan," he said gently. "My name is Alistair Finch. For the last 2 days, I was conducting a small test. I was searching for something I was afraid I'd lost faith in. Genuine, human kindness." He gestured back toward Brenda, who was now weeping silently. Some people, unfortunately, failed that test spectacularly. He then turned his full attention back to Chloe, his eyes full of admiration. "But you, Chloe, you passed in a way I can't even begin to describe. You treated a man who you thought had nothing with dignity and respect. You offered him coffee, and then you gave him your own lunch, even when you were struggling. You asked for nothing in return. You just gave." Tears welled in Chloe's eyes, but they were tears of confusion and disbelief, not sadness. I was just doing what anyone would do." "I think you'd be surprised how few people would. You have something that's rarer and more valuable than all the money in my bank accounts. You have integrity. You have compassion." He took the briefcase from Arthur and opened it on the counter. Inside, neatly stacked, was cash, a lot of it. "I believe in rewarding what's worthy," Alistair said, his voice ringing with sincerity, "and I can't think of anyone more worthy than you. This is for you. Enough to pay for that car, enough to get you out of debt, and enough so you never have to work a double shift again unless you want to." He then pulled out a business card. "On top of that, I run a charitable foundation. It has a multi-billion-dollar endowment, and its entire purpose is to find ways to make the world kinder. But I've realized it's missing something. It's missing a leader with a heart like yours. I would like to offer you a job, managing a new division focused on direct, grassroots community support. You would decide who gets help based on the same compassion you showed me." Chloe was speechless, staring at the money, at the card, at the man who had completely changed her life in the span of 5 minutes. Alistair looked around the diner, his voice now addressing everyone, but his eyes on Chloe. "True wealth isn't measured in dollars or stock prices. It's measured in the kindness we show each other. It's measured in moments like this." He gave Chloe one last grateful nod. "Thank you for reminding me of that." As he turned to leave, he left a stunned diner in his wake, a shamed waitress learning a hard lesson, and a kind one whose life was forever changed, all because she chose to share a sandwich with a stranger. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. We believe stories are powerful, and we have many more to share. Click here to watch another one, and remember, you never know the true impact of a small act of kindness.